Okay, Junior Clubman's looking back to Grammar School, green light, they're off and running. George Gooder's got the start that he wanted, he just got in between Simon Hodge. Oh, massive moment between Philpott and Stephanie Nunn. Michael Philpott cannot get going, so he's left in the middle of the circuit with Stephanie Nunn also, so terrible luck to Michael. So here we go, Todd Hazelwood leads them out, George Gooderis in second place, Simon Hodge in third, Cameron Reynolds in fourth, and Lukey Marcus in fifth as they come around for the first time. So Todd Hazelwood leads them down, George Gooderis. And we always said that Todd Hazelwood's early laps are super quick, so just wait to see if he can establish a race lead. George Gooderis, though, was very, very good in going into Wakefield and got 2 or 3 kart lengths on him. So George is closing the gap and looking like the goods that we promised in the earlier pre-final earlier today. So Todd Hazelwood. Gooderis just closes under brakes, but had to brake in an oddball spot, and you saw he hung the tail out as he tried to avoid contact with Todd Hazelwood. So Todd Hazelwood in the 14, George Gooderis in the 19. A little bit taily for George as he come onto the straight, and Simon Hodge in the 41, because Simon Hodge has got the black plate on, tells us he's the co-state champion. So what a race that was between Hodge and Hazelwood at that race meeting. So here we come down through the S's. Todd Hazelwood, George Gooderis, his cart's just got awfully loose all of a sudden, hung the tail out through the S's, and that's all Simon Hodge needed to get going, but Gooderis just went straight back at Hodge, and they're just swapping positions. Gooderis is waving at Hodge to go. Hodge shakes his head because what's happened is they've actually given Todd Hazelwood a massive head start because of the dicing. So Hazelwood from Gooderis in the 19, from Hodge in the 41. Cameron Reynolds just hanging on to the back of that group. Todd Hazelwood just had a big look behind him just to see how he's positioned. George Gooderis still not happy with his go-kart. It was a little bit pushy and then a little bit oversteery, so the balance isn't quite in the go-kart yet at this stage. So Simon Hodge just gives it a little bit more fuel as he comes around onto the straight. And Todd Hazelwood continues to lead. I was just keeping an eye and see if the gap can close, if George Gooderis can pull him in, and if Simon Hodge can stay with George Gooderis pace-wise. So 11 to go, the first 5. Usually establishes the order and how you manage the tyres for the next 5. And if you've got anything to sprint home, is the best way to go about this. And Todd Hazelwood, he can control this race from here. He's got himself into a really comfortable position as he goes through in the 14. Just gives the engine a little bit of fuel as he goes down the straight. George Gooderis got a little bit of work to do and a little bit of chase. Simon Hodge in the 41 sits in third place. Paul Dankowski's just had a lot of work to do this weekend with this go-kart. They've had some fuel troubles. They might have got some what we call belly button fluff in the carby in the previous one, which didn't help the run of the carby. So up and down, Simon's working away, trying to close that gap. But I tell you what, it's George Gooderis who's closing the gap. He just gave it a little bit of fuel as he went down the straight also. So George is starting to close that gap on Todd Hazelwood. We'll have to use the next 5 laps very clever because Todd's got plenty in reserve because he hasn't been challenged all race long. So here comes Todd Hazelwood down through the S's. George Gooderis to Simon Hodge. And Simon Hodge struggling to stay with the 2 guys in front. George Gooderis the fastest on the circuit at the moment. So onto the straight they come. Todd Hazelwood in the 14. George Gooderis in the 19. Simon Hodge in the 41. Cameron Reynolds just hasn't quite got the pace of the 3 in front. They go up into Wakefield turn. Todd Hazelwood leads them up. Down through the S as they come. I'll tell you what, George is getting closer and closer. He's very good under brakes, and that's one of the characteristics of the Tony kart, is it's exceptionally good under brakes. And I should have said red speed. Clancy just quickly corrected me that it is the original Tony kart, OTK. So down the straight, Todd Hazelwood goes. George Guterres. Simon Hodge hasn't got the pace at this stage to go with the leaders. It'll have to take a bit of dicing in front to get Hodgie back into the equation, I would imagine. So Todd Hazelwood comes through. He's done it. Russell, obviously his father Russell does the tuning on the go-karts. He's done a wonderful job with it. He's really got some good numbers out of it, and Todd's driving it superbly. So 6 laps remain. So this is the important 5. And Todd Hazelwood, George Guterres, Simon Hodge, Cameron Reynolds, and Luke Marcus in that order. Down through the Liberty S's they come. I reckon Todd Hazelwood's just responded to George Guterres' run. And George is starting to run out of go-kart. I think it just might be starting to work. No, Clancy says to me it's still coming. So there's still time left. 5 on the board. There's still time left as they go through. So Todd Hazelwood, George Guterres. All right, so it is a big battle of engine tuning too. Clancy had to let me know. He always knows what engine's on there. So obviously Todd Hazelwood's got support from A1 engines through Brett Arnett, and of course George Guterres using a Piper engine. So that's the battle of the big guys in Australia. So we've got a battle of the big engine tuners also going on. Here comes Todd Hazelwood. George Guterres goes through. Simon Hodge. Cameron Reynolds, and then Sparky Marcus. I tell you what, Clance, we have got a race on. I reckon George has done enough, so let's see how we go with there's 4 on the blackboard. There'll be 3 next time round. And he closes right up under brakes. He needs 2 more laps to be in a position to strike. So here goes Todd Hazelwood, brings it out on the straight. 3 on the blackboard. Todd brings it on the straight. George Guterres comes with him. The run down the straight. George is a bit stronger in the straight line, I think. We'll wait and see. Mid-range, George pulls up, under brakes, Todd holds him. So there's not a lot in it. George has just got a little bit more pipe on, I reckon, and it just pulls a little bit more in the mid-range than what Todd's does. So they come down through the S's, but it's going to be a fascinating battle to the finish with 2 will come up on the blackboard. Todd Hazelwood will look. I can guarantee you will look. So Todd crossed the apex, and George Guterres ready to strike at any stage. Oh, big slide from Todd Hazelwood as he went back to throttle. So he's starting to work the go-kart in response to the attack from George Guterres. Onto the straight they come. 2 on the blackboard. Oh, Hazelwood has a look. So it's on. George Guterres just closed that extra gap there, and there's probably half a kart length over that lap. So Toddy, if you look, you're gonna go, I reckon. So we'll wait and see how they come off the S's. They come down. There's 2 on the blackboard. It'll be the last lap board next time round. Down through the S's. This is where George's go-kart is so strong. Will George go? No, he doesn't. He had to brake a little bit harder, and you can see the kart squirmed a little bit. So it'll all be up to the last lap, and I reckon it'll be Tyson's turn that decides it. George Guterres got a lot of understeer as he went back to throttle that time around, which helps Todd Hazelwood onto the straight. Here we go, Todd Hazelwood. George Guterres ducks behind the NASA panel, closes up the gap. He has a bit of a look. No, he doesn't. He stays there. So it's a battle. We'll come back to over by the Fencecraft sign. They go up the Wakefield turn. And Todd Hazelwood off of Wakefield comes down through the Liberty S's. George Guterres is right there this time out of the draft. Todd has a look. George touches the back of him, and Todd tries to cover the corner. Can George switch back? Todd holds it down tight so he can't get the switch back. Here we go, back to throttle. George goes high for the run onto the straight. He'll try and come down the inside of Todd. He'll get onto the back of him, but Todd Hazelwood's done enough. Half a kart length. Hazelwood from Guterres. Simon Hodge comes home. Cameron Reynolds comes home, and Luke Marcus will come home. So well done to the King Baptist Grammar School, and thank you for being a part of our race meeting. We'll be back very shortly with the Ultra Tune Restricted 125s.